Right, hello guys, today is the 4th of September 2022 and yeah, again I'm recording a video about the situation in Ukraine. Like I say, I'm not the YouTuber to do it, and to be honest, I actually got a bunch of good news. From my side is the fact that uh, one of the few people I consider as close as a relative to myself, which is like I consider her to be like my little sister ever since we met. She's actually gotten out of Kherson. She traveled with her family, with her husband and two kids, across whole of Russia and then into Europe, and she's actually staying in Germany right now. So people are safe, which is nice, and actually I'll talk about this in a slightly different video. Some other interesting stuff is that I did speak that there is this privateer station, as you can see on the screen. This is a channel where the guy is dubbing the videos which are made by mostly the guy called Arestovich, but sometimes he gets other videos as well, and this is a pretty good kind of source of a reasonable kind of analytics on the situation in Ukraine. I don't always agree with the thing the guy says, but most of the time he's pretty spot on, and he does give like all the different opinions in mind, but he does come up with some very good facts and information, because the guy is an advisor to a president's office, so not just to one of the ministers, but like if people want his opinion on some things, he just kind of a guy who goes into many areas. He's not ex, he's still military, active military, and he was trained in Ukraine, infantry training, I think infantry divisions. He was one of the people who'd go on the enemy, behind enemy lines to look for information as well during 2014 invasion, and kind of started as a blogger and grew into the president office advisor. So again, very interesting guy, very interesting like opinions, very interesting information he provides, very interesting views on things most of us probably will not understand, like, you know. Whereas there's also a channel which I have found, which is Denis Davidov. Yep, this guy. Look up his channel. He lives in Kiev, he's Ukrainian, but he does a very good short takes on the situation in Ukraine. So some cool videos, some cool info, like quite humoristics from time to time, at least kind of a right amount of sarcasm and irony in there, right? Much better than I am. So yeah, so the information starts coming out, and you can actually get it from other sources than the normal media channels, which sometimes, to be honest, you read that and you think, oh my god, you know, it's like, I'm from that area, the stuff this guy says who claims to be an expert on this area is a complete fucking bullshit. Right, and nevertheless they do say this, and then you go like, oh my god. So you get some sources starting to appear which are Ukrainian sources, but they are in English, at least in English, which is the language most of the people around the world will generally understand if they use internet and are interested in information. Right, so I'm gonna do a very quick one. Right now, this would be about the actual military situation in Ukraine. So we're gonna take a look at the maps, right? Because obviously lately there has been a lot of talk about Ukrainian Ukrainians attacking in the south. So like I said in some of my videos before, is like Ukrainians have managed to cut off the bridges, right? So they're not really usable, any of the bridges. Like I did in one of my videos saying that, for example, a bridge across in Nova Kakhovka, which is here, is an old bridge. It is part of a kind of dam structure which holds this kind of, it's a power station there, but the actual bridge cover has been damaged so much that you can't really use it to move troops or any sort of armor or anything else like this. So the bridges in like near Antonievka, so there's like a car bridge and there is a rail bridge somewhere down here. Both of those have been destroyed, so you can't use them anymore. According to, like I say, Arestovich and some other Ukrainian experts, the Russian troops are actually kind of showing some real good show of courage and, you know, being able to fight, but their command is completely fucking lost. So like if on the ground some people are quite brave, and some, they were showing audio conversation between officers they captured on the radio. That some people on the ground are very good commanders, then the people higher up, they're completely losing it. They don't know what to do, they don't know how to act, and that was part of the problem in the Russian system. Right, the people who know what they're doing never had the chance to go up. So as we can see up here, right, so you can see attacks in Kherson region. So there's very little attacks which are happening here, which are the most populated areas. So it's like, you know, near Kherson, because, you know, again, cannon fire and things like this, you know, they can do a bit of damage, and nobody wants to get in there until they can like make sure that the city is properly surrounded and they have full control of the territory. Now what happened here as well is when Russians were getting ready to kind of defend, and they said they were gonna go and capture Mykolaiv again, never happened. They have moved extra like 20,000 troops over to this area, and with the bridges cut off, which means there is no real way to supply those troops with weapons and munitions. This means that once they kind of did a bit of intensive fighting, they're essentially losing it, right? They don't have a way to continue fighting, not because they don't have the manpower, but because they don't have anything to supply their artillery with. And I pointed it out in previous one of my videos, and, you know, as pointed out by many Ukrainian experts, the Russian way of dealing with artillery was like, look, this is a square, it's like 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, right? There is somebody there, please shoot it, right? Which is very different from the way Ukrainians use artillery, very different from the way NATO uses artillery. And Ukrainian soldiers who do use already, so there's been enough NATO artillery units, like more modern, with proper computer systems, with proper communications, with like intelligence and the drones and people looking out, you know, it's like, so if beforehand it was like a radio kind of connections, now they have better connections, faster information coming into the computers of the new artillery units. Essentially they can just simply react to the situation much faster, on a much greater scale. The Ukrainian artillerymen, they were like, they got the Polish new artillery units, for example, and they were saying like, look, this is from like getting from the #1 Lada. Those who don't know what it is, they think they had a review of that car sometime on Top Gear, and they were surprised that it drives. But it's a very old car, not super good by modern standards, and they were saying, look, this is from like getting from number one ladder to getting in a modern like Mercedes or BMW essentially. So literally things become so much easier for people who understand how artillery works. They go like, hey, I know all this, it's great, but now I can put this with the modern technology. And this means that they can essentially react to the situation on the battlefield with much more precision and with much more speed. So this allows Ukrainians to kind of break in, and the Russians, they do a good gesture will and fuck off. Right, they do try a bit of fighting, but Ukrainians have been slow. I did say in one of the previous videos, again coming off what Ukrainian experts say, that there's not going to be, not just Arestovich, others as well were saying like, look, this is not going to be a quick like just go in, just shoot a couple of shots. It's going to be slow, methodic, making sure there's very low losses on the Ukrainian side, as well as trying to do the maximum damages to the Russians. And this is how this operation is done. It's like, they're trying to kind of surround this area here, right? So they're putting pressure, but also, if you can see, there's like not as many kind of roads that Russians can really use for their tanks and things like this. It's literally just open fields. So if you look up pictures of Kherson region, it's essentially open fields. Like there's not many forests, not many places you can hide. So if there is a drone above that, they will see you. Now another advantage that Ukrainians have now is they did manage to take out anti-air defense. So with the new missiles they received from NATO and US, mostly the ones that they capture the radar as their target, and they literally just home on that one and they hit it. What Ukrainians did is they retrofitted those missiles to be used with the old Soviet planes. So even the ones who did not have the technology to be used with those weapons, Ukrainians managed to make sure that all the planes, or the planes that Ukrainians have, can actually use those missiles. So this allowed them to take out the anti-air defenses. Another thing which happened was that we're going to look at a different map, this one. Obviously over the days we don't, I don't know, time, yeah, January came, so. Right, we can look at the different dates, but, oops, okay. Go back to, but there were few strikes in Crimea which were done, some people say by US weapons retrofitted, but also some people say they were done by Ukrainian weapons, okay, Kherson, Kharkiv, okay, there we go, August. Right, yes, so we can see there were a few strikes around Crimea at that time. So once Ukrainians kind of managed to take out some of the anti-aircraft guns over here, they managed to shoot off some missiles. Some of the strikes are said to have been from inside the actual Crimea, so people who are actually fighting against Russians in Crimea and other areas. But some people were saying, hey, this is American weapons, but also people say there's a Ukrainian missile, which there's not many of them, but they are being made, called Grim 2. Grim 2, it's like Thunder 2. And this is a land-based missile to hit land targets. And it does it goes up to like 500 kilometers. And people say that those missiles might have also been used. So there's like a whole bunch of weapons they could have used. But what they did, what it has done, is that they've hit the airfields in Crimea, which meant, so like again, I've made a video, let me just look it up, on the 8th of August, where I was saying that if Ukrainians manage to capture like these areas, for example, right, so we're gonna go back to the map. So this is about an hour in I'm talking about this, but let's go back to the map. All right, so these areas here, right, so from here to Melitopol to Berdyansk and up to Polohe, right, as the further they come in, like down in this square, the more they control with their anti-aircraft weapons, and they will make it harder for Russian planes to fly sorties and actually do damage to Ukrainian troops. While now, by reaching those airfields in Crimea, proving that those fields are reachable, because the Russian anti-air defense does not have the capability to react in time to those missiles, because the anti-aircraft equipment has been taken out in this area. So by the time this one reacts to the missiles, it's just too late. What they have made is they have made the Russian planes to move back to Russian territory, right? So, and this means that for Russian planes to take off and fly all the way here, it means they have less fuel to use, less time in battle, and to be honest, more chances to be knocked down. Okay? Sorry. But so Ukrainian offensive is happening very slow, but it is happening. Down here, like, so to be honest, it's like faster than many might have expected. They've already taken a few villages, but it's only like a few kilometers. It's not super like, you know, oh, we go in and we capture everything. Right? It's slow, and as Ukrainians, especially the Arestovich yesterday he made a video, he said, look, you know, it's not just the weapons, it's also trained soldiers. Like we were talking about, I was saying that the British have decided to train Ukrainians for infantry units. So it's about 10,000 people a month, and they've been doing it over the last 3 months or so, 2-3 months. So it's like 30,000-40,000 trained infantry unit people, and it's taken slow because it's like takes some time, and those people are finally starting to make it to the front lines as well. And people were talking about the fact that people say, oh, the Russians have the big losses, so how come they replenish their units so fast? Well, Russians train their replenishment troops for like a week. So here's the gun, here's how you shoot it. This is like some basic training of working in the unit. Off you go. So they're like a cannon for them. Whereas Ukrainians, like I said, they train their units with the Brits. The other units have been training by Ukrainians, but they also been training for like 1 month, sometimes 2 months before they actually see the battlefield. So there's better trained units, they take their time, but when the units come into battle, there's less losses. And all the intention is obviously kind of marked on the south, so it's like the first try where Ukrainians finally starting to get the weapons they needed to attack, but they finally starting to get the troops to the front line, which are fresh, properly trained, making sure they're not gonna lose as many soldiers in battle, right? So that's the target, remember. but something where people were like, all concentrating here. I have paid attention, so there's been a lot of fighting in different areas up east as well. Some attacks by Ukrainians to push back the Russians in the east here, but the one I paid attention to, it's this one. And as you already pointed this out today, this is the square I was talking about. Look, here, Vasilivka, Verkhivka, Zaporizhia, Melitopol, Berdyansk, and Polohe. Yeah, and if you can see, this is the square, and Ukrainians have started attacking down this, and they seem to be having success. So the line has moved. There was around here, but now the Russians have been thrown back, and because they have thrown so much forces to support there, and those forces have been left with no way of moving quickly, and they having to fight, I don't think Ukrainians are meeting as much resistance down here. So they do, it is slow motion as well from what I can see, but very few people are talking about this. And again, the video has shown you, and there I was saying that the Russians are probably the Russian military, who is like, people who understand shit about fighting, are very much afraid of this move. So if we can see, there's little roads here, and Ukrainians attack down the main road to here. Why is this so, again, important to the Russians? Because if Ukrainians move down here and manage to take their hold, the normal Ukrainian artillery, maybe not so normal, but much more of the Ukrainian artillery, have immediate access to these roads. So it just makes moving, because there's roads and railways down here. Like Mariupol, Melitopol, there's railways there as well. As far as I remember, you could go from Kherson all the way to Donetsk without, I think, having to go up to the middle of Ukraine. Which means that it becomes very, very, very hard for Russians to move their troops across this pathway, right? So the move in here is actually more threatening move to the Russian military being able to defend this area than the attack up here. Well, I've made a video when the war was just beginning, and as soon as Russians have crossed into this area, I said, this is a death trap, the war has been lost by Russians, that's it. They're done, they're not getting, this is gonna be the place where they fall. Right, in Kherson, there was a joke that the reason the city was called Kherson is because when the Queen of Russian Empire, who ordered this city to be founded, when she was coming for a visit to this area, she had Herowy Son, which means a very, very shitty dream, right? Well, now her shitty dream is coming true. This is where the Russian Empire completely disintegrates. But for this, so coming into here was a bad mistake. And now we see that there's tens of thousands of troops which are essentially locked in. They're like on an island, like essentially like away from the Russian troops, and Ukrainians are slowly killing them off here, while they're also making a slow motion here, and the Russians don't have the troops to resend in there to push Ukrainians back. And it's going to be about a couple of more months before Russians will truly be able to replenish their ranks, because at the moment they don't have the opportunity to do so. Right, but this is so far all the military news. Okay, so things are not going to be fast, they're going to be slow, but we can see that this and this area lead to the fact that Ukrainians hopefully will get Russians not just on the right side of the Dnieper River, but also they're gonna be able to postpone the Russian movement, troop movement around here, so they will essentially create this kind of big encirclement, so virtual encirclement. They will virtually end up encircling the troops on around from here all the way around Crimea by simply having the capturing this area, so like down here, and maybe even going further to Melitopol, and being able to use the missile weaponry to control the Sea of Azov, so that Russian fleet cannot easily travel there, but also have access to hit the bridge down here. So there's been some strikes around Kerch area, but nobody knows sure why it was like this. So that's kind of, I think, what's the plan is. I think that was gonna happen, but it's not gonna happen very, very fast. Like I said, Ukrainians are not trying to just throw as many people on the military side. So I'm gonna finish talking about military here. Alright, I'm gonna make another video straight after this one, and that one is going to be already about the social economic situation in Russia. So I'll make that one. Thank you very much, and see you later. Take care.